Today, we're going to be covering the tier list for patch 25.20 for mid lane specifically. There haven't been a lot of changes here for solo queue. In case any of you are also wondering, this tier list is meant for lower MMR players, so around Diamond, Emerald, and below. If you are above that, this tier list is not meant for you. This will be reflected in like why some champions will be slightly higher than you might be expecting. Not a lot of changes this patch, to be honest. The main changes we have seen are some Anivia buffs, which means that she will still be placed in the S tier. I think Anivia deserves to be one of the most broken champions on this patch, especially for the lower end of the ladder. She has a very straightforward and simple style when it comes to playing, in the sense that she can push waves very easily, and using that push, she can roam around the map quite well. She's very good at roaming because of her wall and her Q, and she's very good when she's first on objectives. So if you are playing Anivia, just push waves, try to be first on objectives, and make the enemy team contest into you. She's also so strong just because of her scaling and her ability to stall out the game. So I still think she deserves to be S tier. I still want to keep her up there. A champion that I do want to move around a little bit, and thanks to one of the viewers who commented and said, yo, why is Talia so high up? I'm looking at her stats for lower MMR players, and she's just not looking that good. And turns out, Talia is considerably worse at the lower end of the ladder than I thought she was. I thought she would be a lot better. Just because in my head she's not that complicated to play, but I think she might be a little bit too reliant on team play when it comes to her ult, and she needs setup on her team to be super useful with her shove. So without those two spells and without the coordination in solo queue at the lower end of the ladder, she just doesn't function that well. So I am actually going to be dropping her all the way down into B tier. Now, another champion that I'm going to be bumping a little bit, that I also just, if you watched the last tier list, you'll have heard me talk about Ryze. I was mentioning how I'm a little bit confused as to how he's so bad as a champion at the lower end of the ladder in solo queue, because he kind of fulfills things that I usually look for when I look for champions that are good at the lower end of the ladder. He's simple, easy to play, scales well, and he can push very, very easily. His complications started rising at the higher end of the ladder, but if you look at his lower MMR stats, he actually performs quite well. So I am going to slot him into the B tier as well. I'm actually very tempted to put Talia all the way down in C tier, now that I'm looking closer at it. So that's what I'll be doing. Okay. In terms of more corrections, I think I overestimated how good Tryndamere is at the lower end of the ladder, so I'll be dropping him down a little bit. I still think he can be played, but I'll keep him a little bit at the lower end of the ladder as well. I think that's kind of it in terms of like adjustments I want to make that are not related to the patch. So, Anivia, buffs, Azir. He's listed as being an adjustment, but Azir has just straight up received a buff, right? Like, he is getting more AP scaling, he's getting more Ws, or less Ws early game, sorry. But he's getting more AP scaling, and he's getting more on his W, which is his key spell. Yeah, like, this is his key spell, this is what's going to deal damage. He's getting more damage on it, more AP scaling on it, more AP scaling on his E as well. So he's just straight up getting more damage. He is getting a little bit less damage when it comes to actual AoE targets. So your wave clearing is going to feel a little bit weaker during the early stages now, because your soldiers are not going to be piercing as much. But overall, Azir saw like a decent spike in win rate. So I think he deserves to be put up in at the very least C tier as well. He has received some immediate nerfs as well, so that's why he's not going all the way up into the B tier. Another champion that was hit in mid lane is Fizz. Fizz was given some buffs in the sense that they lowered some of his AP scalings, but increased some of his base damage. So you now have a new build on Fizz that I've seen pop around a bit that lets you run Blackfire Torch with Horizon Focus second item to maximize cooldown reduction and really take advantage of this base AP or base damage increase, sorry. So I think he deserves to be popped up into the A tier, actually, because there are new builds on him, and you can spam cooldown reduction on him and be very obnoxious and take advantage of the fact that base damage is now super, super high. So you can go Blackfire Torch, Horizon Focus with cooldown reduction boots, and your E is on like a 4-second cooldown. A very important thing to note is if you do want to go this build with Blackfire Torch, get a good feel for if you want to go Lichbane second or Horizon Focus. You cannot go both because you will delay your other item spikes too heavily. So that's another champion I wanted to touch on. Who else did I want to touch on? Orianna. Orianna was hit a little bit here. If we look at her, She was given additional AP scalings on her W, but the base damage was taken out. So, or the scaling base damage, I should say, was taken out. So W max Orianna is just dead now. Orianna with W max had a lot of potential to do very cool stuff in matchups that were control magey, because she could one-shot the wave and go for very, very quick trades and play with Comet and just QW the wave, one-shot it immediately, and then also just trade very heavily with the enemy laner. This is impossible now because she lost 40 base damage. They are very heavily trying to make Orianna back into a Q-Max champion. So you'll see the build that's doing very well on Orianna at the moment, and what you're going to be seeing a lot at Worlds is Blackfire Torch as well. I think Blackfire Torch with something like a Horizon Focus second is probably the best build you can go on Orianna at the moment. I still think she is probably deserving of an A tier slot with that build, but maybe just a high B tier is good enough as well. This is not really organized very well, but we'll keep it at that. Who else should I got touched on? Who else got touched on? Veigar received some buffs. I don't think he deserves to change locations. I still think he is in the S tier. Don't think he deserves to go up into the S plus tier. I don't think this changes any of his wave clear breakpoints, which is the only thing where like a 10% AP scaling really matters. Although a champion like Veigar obviously does get around 1000 AP, so this is going to be an extra 100 damage on his W, and you are spamming that in fights. But if you're hitting anyone with a W, they're probably dead regardless. Like, you're overkilling people with this spell, so I don't really think the additional damage matters if it doesn't affect his wave clear breakpoints, which I don't think this does, if I recall correctly. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the state of this tier list. I think, actually, a champion that I did underestimate was LeBlanc. I think she needs to be moved up a little bit as well. I didn't really take into account how big that change was, apparently, which I'm a little bit surprised about. Like 10% AP on W, sure, that gives you a wave clear breakpoint. With W max at level 9, when you get Ludens, you don't need the proc anymore, but I really didn't expect it to have that much of an impact. But she's sitting at an above 50% win rate, which is quite rare for LeBlanc in solo queue. So I guess I just underestimated how big that buff really was, which I'm just still so surprised about. But I assume I must have just made a miscalculation or something in terms of how important that was. In terms of anything else, I don't think there's really anyone else I want to move around too much. Quite happy with the state of the tier list at this point. You could maybe argue for something like move Sylas down one, move Kog'Maw up one, maybe move Mel up one because she was recently buffed. But overall, I don't think the buffs that those champions were given really have that big of an impact. Maybe something like a Kayle into the S tier because she performs very well at the lower end of the ladder. But I think right now what we're seeing in solo queue meta is a lot of the champions that are performing very well. Like, there are a lot of few champions that perform very, very well, and then there are a lot of champions that are just kind of mediocre, right? That's also what I think is reflected in this tier list. I don't think there's really that many standout champions right now in the mid lane. Most of the mid lane champions you'll see are just pushing champions that scale well, like I said here. I will also be giving or uploading game examples. I want to upload a game on Xerath, and I want to upload a game on Anivia. So if you are anything that resembles interested in that, please do check that out on the channel when that comes out. But yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with this tier list. I don't think there's anything else really that has changed at this patch. It's a small patch for mid lane. Some things that I will say, if you are annoyed playing against Diana mid lane, because she is quite strong right now, or Nefiri mid lane, you can look at champions like Vex, you can look at champions like Lissandra, you can look at champions like even Swain does quite well against them. If you're struggling against champions like Anivia, or Aurelion Sol, or Brand, or Malzahar, I would recommend champions like... What would I recommend against Anivia even? I, generally speaking, really like the longer range champions against Anivia because you can kind of shove her in and poke her out. So I really like running something like a Xerath into her or like a Ziggs. It is a bit scary because if you get walled, you do just kind of die. You can also play something like a Katarina or a Kassadin into that because you can immediately get on top of the Anivia and murder her. The worst thing you can play against Anivia is something that's mid-rangey or something that's short range that doesn't have options of getting on top of her. Against Morgana, champions that I would recommend are Talon, Zed. Orianna is also pretty good against Morgana. You need either champions that can trade very, very heavily and get on top of the Morgana and kill her, or you need champions that can whittle her down very slowly and trade whenever she steps up to the wave. The champions you don't want are the champions that usually really heavily focus on pushing the wave because they just lose against Morgana. You need champions that have trading tools. So don't play Malzahar, don't really play Veigar. Anivia can work, but Zed, Akshan, Talon, Irelia, Nefiri is great, Tristana is great, Garen is pretty good as well, Orianna, LeBlanc, LeBlanc is actually not that good, sorry. Xerath is pretty good against Morgana. Yeah, champions like this are good against Morgana. But yeah, let me know if you have any thoughts on this. I kind of want to move some more champions around next patch, I think. I think maybe I'm underestimating how weak Nico is, or maybe I'm underestimating how having Syndra below Seraphine seems kind of criminal in my head, so maybe I should bump Seraphine down once. But yeah, I'm overall quite happy with this tier list. I think it reflects the state of solo queue at the low end of the ladder pretty well, after I've made the adjustments to Ryze and Talia. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Have a good one. See ya. Bye.